This is Jeff Zimmerman, one of the owners of Hayden Flour Mills, and we're just so thrilled to be out here today. This is only down the street from the bakery, well, like 30 minutes away, but compared to almost every other typical bakery to mill setup, it is really down the street. In fact, since we're out here today, I brought my truck and we're going home with flour, so trying to get every use out of this trip. So without further ado, I'm hoping Jeff can show us around and we can talk about our relationship a little bit. So thanks for doing this.
That's great. Actually, it's great you brought your truck, because we kind of do the same thing. We try to multi-use everything we do so that there's no waste in the process. I come from a background of quality management and process improvement, and we don't want you as the baker or our consumers to pay for any of our waste. We just want to give you pure value. And so the fact that you brought your truck, you're going to pick up a load.
Everybody who's ever watched any of our content knows that that's the only reason we exist, really, is we've done so much of the work ourselves on the back end, trying to cut all the extra expenses so that we can do something high quality. And you know, the relationship with you guys, I remember early on, because 3 years ago, I took over a one-man operation. Just you knew Jared, right?
I never met him in person.
Okay. It was just Jared in a garage. And when you're doing that and baking at a pretty high level for a single person in a medieval way, no mixers, anything, he was struggling to do all the other stuff, like sourcing, for instance. It takes time to put together relationships. We were talking for 6-7 months before the first flour that we ever got. I remember how scared I was getting it right, because it's either industrial or completely the other end, but the price differences. I was really worried about, could I even do it? So,
well, actually, most people can't. I've seen your bakery, in your posts and stuff, and how you've built that thing up. And we've kind of done the same thing here. Kind of, try to find a deal on equipment, try to maybe get something that someone else is growing out of. What would you, if you had to just like build your bakery from scratch and buy all new stuff and not innovate, what would it cost?
Honestly, well, we are actually dealing with this in real time, because we've been growing at such a fast pace, and we can see a future where we either hit the brakes and are really happy with what we have, but then we have all these new people that get eager, and it's more about wanting to invest in them and their futures, and so there's always a driver to keep us growing. But yeah, I'm looking at, what would it take to redo all this on a bigger scale? And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's even with me taking on the workload that I always have, getting my hands dirty, being an electrician when I need to be, being a carpenter when I need to be, being a baker when I need to be, being a web technician when I need to be. But maybe that is. So there's 2 Arizona bakeries that are heavy buyers of yours, like heavy buyers.
Yes, that's correct.
We're one of them.
Yeah.
And the other one happens to be another garage baker historically, right?
Historically, started in his garage. Had that demand like you have, where people want a good bread. And so it's just referral, and they are knocking down his door. So either you pull back. Actually, people will say with you and with Dawn in Tucson, you'll say, have you ever tried proof bread? Oh yeah, I would like to, but every time I want to get it, it's already sold out. It's like the holy grail of bread. They want to get it, but I think you keep up pretty well now. Work really hard at doing it. But isn't that interesting that the pull from the consumer is?
Well, so I'm hoping that some of the answers to that are right here, because yes, what we do at the bakery, I think, is special, and I think the story is special, and the sourdough aspect is awesome. But when we were first starting, I was looking at the workload, and I had a real issue with the fact that we were going to the store and buying General Mills flour, even though it was not the same flour probably that you see in the bread at the grocery stores. It was their artisan line, but it felt disingenuous to be making artisan bread using clearly flour that is not like, it's industrial to the industrial extreme, right?
The industrial bread business has to build in a lot of waste. And so they have to be able to buy flour at 10, 15 cents a pound.
Yeah.
Because maybe a third of that, actually I would say a quarter of it is going to be dumped because it doesn't sell. So but they make massive amounts of it with industrial processes, and that flour is actually optimized for a 3-hour process, right? What's your time from mix to
24 to 30?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
and that's what brings out all the flavor. You can get some of that flavor. It tastes fake, but you can get some of that flavor with chemicals and additives. It's funny because we've been approached by those companies like, hey, you could put this in there and that in there. And because they're processing aids, you actually don't have to put it on the label of your finished good.
Right.
It's pretty fake. The farmer that owns this land, his family has farmed this land for 100 years.
So long.
Right? You know, people talk about farmers exploiting the land and all that. They've survived on this 100 years, and what could go another 100. They've got a beautiful family. They could keep it going. But as you look around here, it's all houses growing up around them, and it becomes impossible to farm because even though they have the grandfather rights to farm, as soon as these tractors are put in the field and make dust, the complaints start coming in. You know, as soon as they do anything, get some mud or dirt on the road, the complaints come in. So eventually they get pushed out.
That's been happening in Phoenix, where farmers have just been pushed really far out on the fringes.
Yeah, some of the best farmland in the world, the best climate for farming, and we're paving it over. It is.
Can you actually talk a little bit more about that? Because it's not just in baking, but anyone who's looking at what we're doing from outside of Arizona assumes that Arizona is just dust ground that nothing grows on. That's not true. You said it's some of the best farmland. Can you talk about
especially when the indigenous people or the native people, the Tohono O'odham, the Pima Indians, it's hard to know exactly what everybody calls everybody nowadays, but that was a floodplain, and the soil was amazing, and our climate was amazing. That whole thing was equivalent to the center of origin for wheat, which would have been the Mesopotamian River Valley, commonly called the Fertile Crescent, Iran, Iraq, Tigris-Euphrates River. It was just like that here. I mean, this was a great place for growing crops, especially grains. But of course, that water was diverted and a lot of things happened. But yeah, this is a good place for farming.
So then you guys are also growing for milling. You're not just growing the same wheat that the industrial mills are you?
No, obviously that would be a death warrant for our business because they do a very good job at growing millions of acres of commodity grains. What we have specialized in are what are called heritage grains, mostly grains that were grown prior to the 1950s when the structure of grain changed. That is 4 or 5 feet tall. Modern wheat would be 12
Is that
to...
the Bluebeard Durham?
Yeah, that's Bluebeard Durham. Modern wheat would be, 12 to 18 inches tall. So the energy goes into the fruit. But because it's so concentrated and such high yielding, it's not sucking up a lot of nutrients from the soil.
Well, so if you have this much above ground, Does that mean that you only have about that much underground
Yeah,
as well?
even less the way it's spread, because it's made to grow with lots of artificial inputs, whereas standard height wheat is made to grow way deep down into the soil. So that if that's 4, 5, 6 feet tall, your root structure will go down 6 or more feet.
My understanding of that aspect of things is that the more root structure, the more nutrients stay in the soil in general, right?
The better. It's like a factory, and it's an exchange. So good things go down and good things come up, and it supports itself so that you'll have fertile soil for the years to come. There's a lot we could talk about. In fact, that would actually be a really great session. I'd love to talk about it and illustrate it with your followers and customers, because it's a big, huge distinction. So when you buy the 50-pound bag of flour that's the industrial variety, remember everything's been stripped from it, and the ingredient they start with is high-yielding industrial wheat. So there's no flavor. But these loaves were cooked off today, and obviously we're not bakers, but we still, if we were a large flour company, we'd have $1 million lab and we'd test all these things on how to make industrial bread. Instead, we have a standard recipe we use, and we mix up our flour and we bake it off to see how it'll do before we start.
But only one set of variables. You follow the same.
Yeah, we do.
That's great.
But the point is, every crop, every field will perform differently, and you'll be able to tell us, because now we're coming into our 2020 crop.
Yeah.
And we'll send you samples, and you're going to go, okay, this works, or you know, because we do a blend for you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put a little more of this, a little more of that. When we started out, I asked a medium-sized milling company. I said, hey, could you take some of our flour? Could you mill it? Could you help us out here and make the product? And they said, oh, sure, we could do that. And they needed 1 million pounds to start their machine. And I said, well, that doesn't quite work for us, because we want to do fresh milled, and it would take me a year or 2 years to work through that kind of inventory. But so we make pasta in here. We have a lot of customers that make their own pasta. So if we extrude it, we know what the issues are with it. We actually really modified how we mill the pasta based on our own experience. So people are pretty satisfied. We have a deck oven, so we can simulate, you know, what you would experience.
Yeah.
In a very limited way. I'm just going to tell you, we don't know what we're doing, but we throw stuff up in there, and sometimes it comes out really good, and we know that's good. Sometimes it comes out bad, and we don't know why, but it makes us go back to the drawing board.
Well, I saw the bread today, and just off the top of my head, a lot of those loaves look great. One of them looked like it might be a little underproofed.
Yeah.
But they actually looked pretty solid. I'm attracted to the more rustic looking loaves. That's what got me into baking in the first place. So I like the lack of refinement in some ways, the freeform shaping, whatnot.
Okay, maybe so I should have paid attention when you taught the class, because I don't know how to shape a loaf. That's why they're rustic. They're rustic because I watch the videos, I look in the books, and they make it look so easy, and then I do it, and now you saw I have 5 different configurations of the loaf. So